about to get torn up. Prepare yourselves for the Vaping Militia.
And now for your hosts, Mondo, Robin, and Knock.
We are back on a Friday night, so welcome. I know everyone's talking about the big thing that just happened. Well, it's funny because two things big happened, one for California and one for the U.S. of the United States, back to back. One was Governor Brown did sign, I believe, 5 vaping bills into law in California. And then the FDA came out with the regulations that we're all going to be having to deal with. And it's just crazy that this is happening. But we knew it was happening, and if we're kidding ourselves, and if you thought it wasn't going to happen, wow, you must have been living on another planet, because we knew this was coming down. We were trying to minimize as much as we could. We were trying to be more, try to head some of the stuff off at the pass, talking the OMB, getting out there and doing everything we can. But a lot of people just fell asleep. Said, nah, I don't care about it. I don't care. It's not going to happen. If you had that mindset, you're crazy. Because this has now come down. I have my hosts, Knocked and Robin, with me. And I will bring them in. How are you doing, Knocked? Robin?
Stressed.
It's been quite a week. It really has.
Now, when all this came down, I mean, 499 pages of just legalese and FDA terms and just, oh my God. It's just a monstrosity. Someone even said it was a monstrosity. Now, something that I noticed, Knocked and Robin, when these did drop and Facebook lit up in the vaping world, there was a lot of finger pointing. A lot of people pointing at advocacy groups, a lot of people pointing at each other, a lot of people pointing at vape shops, a lot of people pointing at vapors. It was like, oh my God. So, I mean, what did you guys see and hear just from yesterday? And you're seeing it today still.
Well, I found it kind of funny. You know, they released 499 pages at like 7:45 yesterday morning.
Yep, 8:45.
Literally within 2 hours, people were, already, the chatter had already gotten greater than I've ever seen, bigger, and I say greater as in size, not in quality of the chatter. People were running scared. People were, the sky is falling. Oh my God, what are we going to do? Tell us what to do. Oh my, and I'm like, really? They haven't even had a chance to, it's 499 pages, folks. And it's I've heard one of the people call it reg speak. And, it's legalese to the nth degree. And, they're not going to be able to cover 499 pages in an hour and tell you what the magic bullet is. It's going to take some time, folks. And that was my biggest takeaway from the first 2 hours of yesterday, was that, people were just like running scared, and, it almost to me looked like a vote of non-faith to the people that are trying to save the industry.
My phone, my cell phone, the calls, the texts, and my Facebook messages were blowing up like crazy yesterday morning. Same kind of stuff. What do we do? What does this mean? What's going to happen? And basically, like you just said, Knock, I tell people you need to give everybody time to go through it. There's so much of it, absorb it, digest it, and then figure out what to do next, But there are a lot of people who said, I didn't even know this was going on, which really frustrated me because we've been talking about it for quite some time. And so have a lot of other people, and probably a lot of people who were waiting for somebody else to do something because they weren't doing anything. But yeah, it's been crazy for a couple days now.
It has been.
One of the things that really annoyed me was somebody posted today, when does this come through OMB? When is OMB going to tell us what they're going to do? And I'm like, what?
Where have you been?
FDA wouldn't have released it had OMB not released it like a month ago.
Right.
Where were you when we were telling everybody OMB has released the regs back to FDA and they will be announced pretty soon? Yeah, I mean, there were literally people not paying any attention whatsoever.
Yeah. You know what? Somebody messaged me. I was telling Mondo a little while ago. Somebody messaged me tonight and said, is it true that people knew that this was possible a couple of years ago? And I said, absolutely it was. Absolutely. We've been talking about it for a couple of years. And then I want to say last spring, Knock, you can tell me if I'm wrong, maybe like March, April, something like that was when we started to talk about the coal bill. Does that sound right? About that time frame?
The coal bill or the coal amendment?
I mean, the amendment, sorry.
Yeah, that was,
like last spring, maybe?
March. Well, the coal amendment to the appropriations bill that just, got voted to be added to the appropriations bill. The appropriation bill has not been approved, by the way, just so that everybody understands. The amendment is added, but the bill has not moved. The actual HR 2058 is, that was last year.
That's what I'm talking about. When that first came out, when we first started to try to encourage people, to make phone calls and do everything.
Oh
when
my God,
first
that's been a full year.
Yes. And somebody asked me about that. And I said, I remember being at an event early last May and pushing that issue because, it was like the first event I had gone to after that came up. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
And I was away with Fred. We were in Chattanooga. And I was trying to push that. And we had papers that we printed out and stuff. You know where they ended up? I saw them on the event room floor. That's where they were. Mm-hmm. And here we are a year later, a little over a year later, with people going, I didn't even know that was going on. Really? Why didn't you know? Why didn't you know this was going on?
Right. Why didn't they know? I mean, are we living in, were they living in a different world? Did they just, it comes down to they just didn't care.
Right.
Because if they didn't know about all this stuff, what was going on, and there's no way they couldn't have not known, because somebody must have told them something. If they're on Facebook, come on, you're in the vaping world of Facebook. You see these articles coming down. You see people talking. You read everything, and for you to say, I just didn't know.
Well, I think they were waiting for everybody, especially people like us, in groups similar to us, to do it. I know one time somebody said to me, why aren't you guys in Florida fighting for us? Why aren't your boots on the ground? And I said, I don't live in Florida. You need to get your boots on the ground. You're the guy in Florida. It's not just about us. It's about everybody. But some people think that we're going to fight their battles for them, and we can't fight everybody's battle for them. But I think there's a misunderstanding about that.
Now, Nog, let me ask you this. Does this regulation affect tobacco companies?
Well, the documents, and I'm still sifting through. I'm not anywhere near getting a complete read yet, because I want to diligently cover everything. So the justification that they are using for not having changed the grandfather date is that they claim they found what's called a predicate product that was marketed in 2006 and was available in the U.S. in February of 2007, which is the grandfather date. So they're claiming that there is a predicate product for some of the available products. So there are going to be some companies, and I'm assuming from the language that's in there, that it will be a cig-alike that is manufactured by one of the larger companies that will qualify for what's called a substantial equivalency application. They didn't say who it was, obviously, and they didn't even say what the predicate product was. We're making some assumptions because we know that there was no refillable e-liquid marketed in 2006.
Right.
So the only assumption that we can make is that it is a cig-alike, and yes, we're assuming that it's going to be a cig-alike that's manufactured by
Big Tobacco.
a big tobacco company. Now, my understanding had been that the cig-alike technology that was available in 2006, 2007 was substantially different than the cig-alikes that are being manufactured now, because you look at the Reynolds commercial for Views, and they talk about how it is the new top of the line technology and all yada yada yada. My understanding is that it has to be substantially equivalent. I mean, that's why it's called that. If there's a whole lot of new battery technology or new delivery technology that's been included in their Views, for example, how does it qualify? That's what I want to know. Or are there substantial equivalency requirements not as stringent as I thought? We really don't know. And this is one of the things that the attorneys and all those people are going to have to look into, because, there are companies that manufacture cig-alikes that aren't big tobacco, V2 and some of those companies, and was it White Cloud out of Florida and Pure Smoke? So there's different ones, and I'm not sure really how much they've advanced. Maybe that's the predicate product. We don't know.
Another thing too, a lot of people have been asking, and I've been hearing this and everything going around, is what happens to the giveaways? What happens to the free samples? What happens to all that right now as what we know so far?
I sat into a vendor meeting yesterday with one of the organizations, and the discussion that they had, and it's really weird because there's language in here that's confusing. There's some places that it seems to contradict. One of the places says that if there's zero nic and you can prove that it's zero nic, then it won't be regulated the same way as other e-liquid. And then there's a language later on that specifically says even if your product does not have nicotine in it, it still must be labeled, and it gives very specific language of what the label must say, how big the label is, what point the font must be, how much percentage of your label this warning must be, that this is a tobacco product. So if we make some and again, let's preface all of this by saying none of us are attorneys. All we're doing is making guesses and talking about what I was when I sat in with the vendor meeting, the trade meeting yesterday, and the attorneys will probably bang this out, but the language that they used was that if it's labeled this is a tobacco product, the tobacco control law says you cannot give free samples away.
In which everything is going to be labeled that way. Is that looks like what's going to happen?
Well, no, that is going to happen. That's what the rule says. So if it's got nic in it or not, it still has to have that label.
So, in other words, do not give away any free samples of an e-cigarette or any other type of ENDS, ENDS standing for Electronic Nicotine Delivery System, which kind of encompasses everything, or vaporizers. They're even saying that it would include their components and parts.
Yes.
So
and we've been saying that for a long time.
Yeah. So do you feel it's far-reaching? Because you think about it, the screw that goes on the Addy, can't give that away for free because now that's part of the tobacco.
That is a component.
Right.
Enforcement is going to be a nightmare if this interpretation